the It's in Queens podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and this is the show that celebrates the people, the places, and the pulse of the world's most diverse borough. This podcast is brought to you by the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council, both dedicated to showing the world why Queens truly has it all, from global flavors and cultural treasures to thriving small businesses and inspiring green spaces. As the crisp fall air settles in and the leaves begin to turn, there's something magical about this season in the borough. The borough's parks come alive in color and in character, each one with its own story, its own rhythm, and its own community spirit. Whether you're strolling beneath the wide open skies of Flushing Meadows Corona Park, exploring the woodland trails of Forest Park, or discovering the quiet beauty of Alley Pond Park and Cunningham Park, there's no shortage of places to reconnect with nature. Queens has more than 12,000 acres of green space, and they offer a daily reminder that in the heart of New York City, there's always room to breathe, to explore, and to be inspired. Recently, I joined a community gathering hosted by the Alliance for Flushing Meadows Corona Park, and it reminded me how essential these spaces are, not just for recreation, but for connection. So this week, I'm thrilled to welcome Anthony Sama, Executive Director of the Alliance for Flushing Meadows Corona Park, who shares his insight into the park's history, its transformation, and its importance as a shared space for all New Yorkers. Anthony Sama, welcome to the It's in Queens podcast.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for having me. I really appreciate it.
So let's start off by finding out more about you and your career. Tell me about it.
Sure. I've been with New York City Parks for about 15 years. And I started my career with the Parks Department working as a special event coordinator in our citywide special events office, working to help facilitate and permit large-scale events across our 5 boroughs in our city parks, and did that for almost 13 years. Worked my way up in that office to be the director of the office for a number of years, and then in 2022, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to apply for and be selected as the next administrator for Flushing Meadows Corona Park, along with which also comes the responsibility of executive director for the Alliance for Flushing Meadows Corona Park. Really excited to be in Queens. I'm a Queens native, born and raised, and now I'm on Long Island, but obviously have a lot of deep roots in Queens, and so really excited to continue my career with the Parks Department in my home borough, and especially in a park.
And we never hold that
Go ahead.
against anyone if they don't live in Queens.
Never hold it against anybody, but I make sure to clock it for later. Don't worry.
So what was it about this role that was attractive to you?
Well, I mean, as I was about to say, Flushing Meadows Corona Park is truly an iconic space. I mean, anybody who is a Queens resident, I don't have to wax poetic on the history of Flushing Meadows from its early days as the site of the 39 World's Fair, and then again the site of the World's Fair in 64 and 65. Home of the New York Mets, home of the U.S. Open, as well as home to all of the borough's most influential cultural institutions like the New York Hall of Science, the Queens Museum, the Queens Theater, not to mention some other really truly beloved amenities that the Parks Department has in our inventory, like our aquatic center, the World Ice Arena, our pitch and putt golf course. There really is no shortage of really amazing opportunities in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, and the iconography of the park with being the home of the Unisphere and the New York State Pavilion and so many other truly tremendous iconic landmarks and remnants from the 64-65 World's Fair that so many people in Queens hold dear to their hearts. It was perhaps a little bit before my time, but I know how important it is to so many people in the borough and in the city of New York and honestly internationally. I mean, we get visitors from all over the world who come to this park to view the Unisphere and these other remnants from the World's Fair. So truly an iconic space, and I am very humbled and privileged and honored to have the opportunity to work within it.
And as much as it's a destination, I'll say a national, even a global destination, locally, every time I have been in this park, there's so much diversity in people, but also in activities that I see going on. Why do you think it's become such a destination locally too, in Queens and to anyone who lives in New York City?
Well, certainly it's, melting pot of diversity and culture here in New York. I mean, I believe that the stat is that the county of Queens is perhaps the most culturally diverse space per square mile in the country, perhaps even the world. Hundreds of cultures, languages spoken, and so naturally, those people all need space to recreate. They all need space to stretch their legs and as we know, our parks are incredibly vital to not only our physical health but our mental health. And so, parks play such an integral role, I think, in our daily lives. And I think people sometimes don't realize it, can take it for granted, but we're here to provide that respite for people from, the concrete jungle, if you will, of New York City. And so I think naturally people in Queens gravitate to Flushing Meadows because not only is it just such a magnificent space, a large space, almost 900 acres, the fourth largest park in New York City, larger than Central Park, larger than Prospect Park. It's also a space that's incredibly welcoming of our communities, regardless of your background, regardless of your culture, regardless of your creed. We truly welcome everybody. Certainly hearkening to those World's Fair days, bringing countries from across the world together to show, what they have to offer the world. But similarly, Flushing Meadows Corner Park today is a space where all of these cultures come together to share their food, to share their sports, to share their language with the world. And there's no better place, in my opinion, to experience that than Flushing Meadows Corner Park.
And let's get to the Alliance itself. Talk a little about the mission and some of the work that you do.
Absolutely. So the Alliance for Flushing Meadows Corner Park was established in 2016. So we're still a relatively young, nonprofit partner. We are the only licensed partner with the City of New York via the Parks Department. And our mission is truly to help further establish, tremendous programming and support for Flushing Meadows Corona Park. We're like I said, we're a partner with the Parks Department, and we do everything we can to further their mission to steward this great space, environmentally, ecologically, programmatically. We truly try in everything that we do to bring new opportunity to our communities, but also make sure that what we're providing them with is a clean, safe, and truly dynamic park space. We have really made some amazing strides that the Alliance has over the last few years since I became executive director in terms of developing, a great foundation for the organization, so that we're ready to take the next step in support that this park needs. Given some of the underfunding and lack of investment that we've seen, not only in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, but I believe in our parks citywide, over the last, number of years.
And given your work with the Parks Department, it seems like it was probably a very smooth transition to working with the Alliance. But talk a little about the relationship between the Parks Department and the Alliance, because I think that's important for listeners to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our parks and open space partners are incredibly important to our green spaces, if not for the financial and programmatic support that they provide to parks, then also for the advocacy, and just awareness that they bring to the space for their communities about what's happening, how to be involved, and how to really engage and advocate for our green space, and how important it is and how vital it is to our urban landscape and to a city like New York. Yes, I have great relationships with the Parks Department. The Alliance has great relationships with the Parks Department on a day-to-day basis. We're supporting them with funding for seasonal staff for our busiest season. We're making sure that the park has, sufficient resources to clean and to program. Although, what's sufficient to some people might not be sufficient to others, and this we can certainly always do more. But that's really kind of the day-to-day operation support that we provide to parks. And then on a seasonal level, we're providing programming to the park annually. We support fitness programs, we support arts and cultural programs, and we support a really robust volunteer program, getting people, out of their homes and into the park to help with, removal of invasive species or just park cleanups, or to learn about the various ways that an urban landscape like Flushing Meadows really helps to support our ecology and our environment, and the role that the park plays also in our climate resiliency, which is at the forefront, I believe, of a lot of people's minds. But I have, like I said, I have deep roots with parks. There's a lot of tremendous people who work for the Parks Department. Certainly none more tremendous than our commissioner, Iris Rodriguez Rosa, who I've had the pleasure to work with in all my 15 years with parks, and has, continues to be a great steward, a great supporter, a tremendous civil servant. And I have nothing but, true respect and admiration for her and all of the executives at the Parks Department who are doing this work every day, to keep our green spaces safe and clean, and truly dynamic for our New York City residents.
And I want to get to any of the initiatives or projects that are on the horizon that you're excited about. But because you mentioned volunteerism, that's one of the things I would love for our listeners to know about the diversity of opportunities. You mentioned about even assisting with getting rid of invasive species. I just did this up with a group in Inwood Park recently, and having worked with the Natural Areas Conservancy a little while ago, I'm very well aware of what invasive species can do, but talk about the diversity of volunteer opportunities that you provide so that anyone listening might say, this one's not right for me, but this other one could be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have no shortage of volunteer opportunities in our park for individuals, for groups, for corporations, anybody who wants to take some time to come to the park to get involved or to even learn, educate themselves about those things I mentioned. We welcome everybody, and we have a tremendous amount of opportunities year long. I mean, a lot of people I think associate our outdoor spaces and parks with spring, summer, fall, but even during the winter, there are opportunities. There's maintenance that needs to happen, and we could use your support, year round, from everywhere from Flushing Bay and the shoreline of Flushing Bay, where we do cleanups or um, different wildlife activations like horseshoe crab rescues and things like that, to make sure that we're keeping the living shoreline of Flushing Bay active and alive and doing what we can to support that. All the way to Willow Lake in our natural areas. You so eloquently raised the Natural Areas Conservancy and the great work they do citywide. The Flushing Meadows ourselves has a natural area at Willow Lake and the Pat Dolan Trail, where we also host, invasive removals, trail cleanups, trail maintenance opportunities, whether it's building things like, elevated walkways, because as we know, Flushing Meadows is also susceptible to flooding, and sea level rise. And so, we want to make sure even through those experiences, people still have the ability to access these truly wonderful, magnificent spaces that take you away from the urban, concrete jungle of New York City, and immerse you into what feels like you're sometimes just walking in the middle of a forest. It's truly wonderful to provide people with that opportunity and that experience in a space like New York City. But yeah, and then everything in between, the invasives that are around Meadow Lake. We have also a lot of wildlife throughout the park. Not only, I think, our red-tailed hawks that a lot of people are familiar with, but even things like bats as pollinators, and teaching people the important role that even bats play in a city like New York. And actually, this past year we hosted an event where we built bat boxes, and put them up in Willow Lake in our natural area to try to bring, a little bit of that, ecological boost back to Flushing Meadows, to support that pollination and support the role that wildlife plays in our city.
And good timing to talk about that, given that Halloween is right around the corner.
Very apropos. Absolutely.
So, any exciting initiatives, seasonal projects, events that are coming up on the horizon you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the most important one that I would suggest is the Alliance's Vision 2050 initiative. Vision 2050 is a roadmap to the future of Flushing Meadows Corona Park. We've discussed some of the underfunding and lack of investment that this park has had. But what Vision 2050 really tries to do is not only shine a light on so much of the work that needs to be done in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, but create an opportunity for us to have a dialogue about how we can raise more money for this park, both through public and private funding opportunities. And then, kind of take this one step at a time, which will ultimately culminate in a master plan, a new master plan for Flushing Meadows Corona Park to support the next 25, 50 years of generational use here in Flushing Meadows, understanding what the community wants to see in terms of how they use the park, what amenities they want to see brought to the park, what are we doing well, what maybe cod we do better. Are there things that we don't have in Flushing Meadows that they would like to see developed? And then, of course, focusing a lot on infrastructure. As I, alluded to, this park that was established and built in the 30s, believe it or not, a lot of that infrastructure is still underground, and we still rely on that infrastructure today. And there's so much that needs to be upgraded in terms of our electrical, in terms of our water system, in terms of our sanitary and stormwater management. These are all things that will not only contribute to a long-term sustainable health for the park, but also to that climate resilience that I discussed. And so along with Vision 2050, I have to call out the Center for an Urban Future, who was part of that Vision 2050 roadmap, the first phase, and their report that just recently came out, a park that Queens deserves, in really highlighting some of these, critical issues that the park faces day in and day out, and a call to action for our public servants, our elected officials, both on a city level, a state level, and a federal level, to invest in this incredibly important asset and amenity that we have in Flushing Meadows Corona Park. And then also, I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention the Waterfront Alliance, who is continuing to do their work on the climate resiliency study funded by Congresswoman Grace Meng. We're really truly grateful to the Congresswoman and to Waterfront Alliance for the work that they've done on this project. We're excited to see the report come out in the next few weeks, and all the advocacy that will, come out of that as well. I think it's a really incredible moment for Flushing Meadows Corona Park. I think we have so much opportunity at our fingertips, and I feel really encouraged by the partners and the advocates and our community organizations who have shown such an interest in further enhancing and establishing, in securing a great future for Flushing Meadows.
Where can listeners go to learn more about the Alliance?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. You can visit the Alliance's website at allianceforfmcp.org. That's allianceforfmcp.org. We have an incredible amount of information on our website, from the volunteer events that we talked about that you can get involved with, a calendar of just special events that are happening that the Alliance also supports, as well as information on Vision 2050, information on our community advisory board. If you want to get more involved in the Alliance and in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, the community advisory board is a great way to learn more about what the Alliance is doing on a regular basis, learn about how we're investing in the park, and also make your voice heard, so that, if you have, desires or interests or priorities you would like to put at the forefront of the Alliance, and even the Parks Department. The Alliance, as we discussed, has such close relationships with parks, and we're talking to parks every day about what the needs of Flushing Meadows are, and we want those needs to be aligned with what the community wants. And the Community Advisory Board is a great way to do that. But yeah, there's such a tremendous amount of information there. You can also just email us at info@allianceforfmcp.org if you ever have any questions. Our contacts are also on the website. Sign up for our newsletter, which comes out monthly, to learn more about what's happening in the park, the great events, and also just some informational updates about projects that are going on in the park. So yeah, tremendous amount of information on our website. So that would be the best place to go. And I would also say, we host a lot of great community events as well. And there's a lot of fundraising opportunities if you want to get involved that way and help donate to the Alliance's cause. you can do so via the website as well, or also get involved in some of the other fundraising events and initiatives. We'll have a Giving Tuesday initiative coming up this year, a year-end appeal, and annually we host our Evening Under the Sphere, which is a low-cost way for people to get involved and support the Alliance.
Anthony Sama, thank you so much for appearing on the It's in Queens podcast.
Jeff, really, truly wonderful to be here. I'm super grateful to you and It's in Queens, and can't wait for what lies ahead for Flushing Meadows Corona Park and our park citywide.
The Alliance for Flushing Meadows Corona Park keeps this vital public space thriving through free community programs from fitness classes and music festivals to World's Fair history walks. Their work ensures that the park remains a living and breathing part of our cultural identity. So make a point of visiting this season. You will not regret it. And if you're looking for more things to do this week, next week, well, throughout the year, we always have you covered. That is where Rob Mackay comes in, because he's with the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council. And each and every week, he brings us details on some of the more dynamic, exciting events that are happening in our borough. Here's this week's report.
Hello, Jeffrey. After we get through Halloween, the big event coming up is the Queens World Film Festival, which will run from November 5th to November 16th. It's actually the 15th annual, and 124 films from 17 countries are on the menu. 22 of those films are by Queens artists, I might ask. Everything is either at the Kaufman Astoria Studio Zucker Theater or the Museum of the Moving Image. And because there are 124 films, they're organized into different blocks, thematic blocks. For example, there's Queer Pioneers, there's Tough as Nails, True Stuff, documentary, animation, all that kind of stuff. Because there's so many movies, I'd say you'd have to go to our website, it'sinqueens.com, to get all the different schedules, because there are 31 blocks in total. All right. Thank you, Jeff. See you at the movies.
That is just a taste of what's going on in Queens, but there's so much more. The place to go to find out everything that's on the horizon is at the It's in Queens website at it'sinqueens.com. And by the way, you should also make a point of checking out queensny.org for any information about, say, local business news, resources, and opportunities to support your community. And by the way, when you're visiting Flushing Meadows Corona Park or any park this season, take some photos and tag us. Use the hashtag #It'sInQueens. Make sure to do that when you post on Instagram or X, because your photo could become our photo of the week. So as we close, I'm reminded again of how our parks connect us to the city, to each other, and to something larger. So what was once a landfill became a world stage, and today stands as a symbol of renewal and imagination in the heart of Queens. And of course, I'm talking about Flushing Meadows Corona Park. So this week and next, this season, again, step outside, breathe in the crisp autumn air, wander through the trails, find inspiration in the beauty that's right here in our own backyard. Until next week, I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and that's it for this week's It's in Queens podcast.